Hi everyone, welcome to episode number 48 of Perfect Inspiration. My name is Brian Matiash. So when I was thinking about this week's episode, I was actually browsing through an old catalog of images in Lightroom, and I know I've written about this topic in the past, and there actually might be an older episode of Perfect Inspiration that touches on this topic, but it really is important for me to go through my Lightroom catalogs. And sometimes when I'm going back through my Lightroom catalogs through previous years, I'm going because I'm looking for different images. But for this particular example, I was going through it because I actually wanted to learn. I wanted to see if there were any trends to how I took photos in the mid to late 2000s. Because I wanted to see, just from where I am now and where I was, what changed. Now, usually I'm in the 2009 and 2010 catalogs because I find that that's where my images started getting a little stronger. Despite still being old, that's where I felt like I really was getting a rhythm. But in this case, I was actually in my 2007 catalog. And you can see, let me just go to Lightroom right here. This was taken on October 21st, 2007. And let's just jump really quickly to the map view. This is in Boston, so this is the Charles River right here. And every autumn there is the head of the Charles Regatta, which is this boat race. It's really fantastic. I tried to go every year when I was living there. And you can see, if I kind of zoom in, this is the Boston University Bridge. And so I was actually standing like right over here. And it's great because it's a very photographer-friendly bridge. You can get pretty much to the edge, and I had my tripod. Actually, no, I think back then I was just walking around. HDR, I don't think it had yet come into my purview, but I kind of was standing here, and up and down the river, these kind of boats were sailing, and you can see some kayaks right here in the satellite view. And then what you'll see in the photo is the Massachusetts Avenue Bridge right there. So shooting from here down here, and you can see that right there. There's the Massachusetts Avenue Bridge. So what I want to do is, one of the things I noticed actually before I start editing is I noticed that almost all of the images I took, this was actually one of the rare ones, but almost all of them were vertical. Today when I look at my images, they're almost all horizontal, and it really does make sense. As I wrote in the text above, when I was shooting, when I started shooting, I was photographing in urban areas, in New York and in Boston specifically. I shot a lot. And as you can see, typically urban environments, they lend themselves to that vertical orientation. And that's kind of how I saw. That's how I looked through my camera and I saw things. And when, especially since moving to Oregon, I shoot much wider because I'm typically shooting these kind of vistas and these landscapes that lend themselves to being horizontal. And it was something that was really interesting to learn. So this image, it's really old. Again, 2007, so that's 6 years, a little less than 6 years. I don't remember which camera I was shooting. It was either my 40D or, let me bring out the EXIF, or my old Rebel. Yeah, it's a Rebel XTI. So, old camera. I had a 70-200. This was the f4L without IS. So, it's always fun to go back and see the image quality. I'm not talking about necessarily the quality of this photo, but the image quality, like how it looks in terms of any sort of resolution or noise. And this was before I really used any filters, so it's pretty much a snapshot. Everything's frozen in place. Had I been shooting today, I probably would have at least had a polarizer and maybe drag the shutter just a bit so I can get some motion in all of these boats. But I really like the way the image came out. This is pretty much straight out of camera, and I like it because they look like little water bugs. The way each oar is sticking out, it looks like little legs of a bug on the surface of the water. So for me, we're going to do a few things here. We're going to use perfect mask, and then we're going to use perfect black and white, and then focal point. So to start, I'm going to go to... Now, actually, here's an interesting thing for those of you who use Perfect Photo Suite in terms of a workflow with Lightroom. If I were just using, say, perfect black and white here, let's say in this episode all I was going to do is convert it to black and white. All I would do is right-click, go to Edit In, and then go to perfect black and white. That's all I would need to do. But because I know that I'm going to use multiple modules, I want to go into perfect layers first, because from perfect layers, I'll have my module selector, kind of like Lightroom has up here, and I'll be able to go to multiple modules in one session, rather than me going to right click and then go to perfect mask or go to perfect black and white. So we'll go to File, Plug in Extras, and I'm going to select Perfect Layers. All right, so on this particular day in the fall in Boston, it was a pretty boring flat blue sky. So I'm going to go into Perfect Mask first to knock that out. So by clicking on Mask up here in the top right, I'll be able to do that. All right, so this should be pretty easy. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the drop brush. It's the second tool from the tool well up here in the top left, and I'm just going to draw one stroke kind of through the sky. And you can see here, knocked out the sky really nicely. That's really all I need to do. So I'm going to click Apply to return back to perfect layers so that we can move on. All right, so now what I need to do is put a different sky in. Well, if you have Perfect Photo Suite and you open up the left browser, and the way you do that is, in this case, I hit Command left arrow. So Command left arrow hides. On PC, it'll be Control left arrow, and then it'll show it. I'm going to make it a bit wider. And then I'm going to go to the Extras tab, and then under the backgrounds, there's a folder called Skies. And this comes with Perfect Photo Suite and Perfect Mask. So I'm going to scroll down here, and I'm just going to get a nice kind of plain sky. This one right here. I'm going to double click, and I'm going to hit Add. All right, so with this sky, for me, the interesting part is the bottom. You know, the clouds are down here, and that to me, I find to be much more interesting. So what I want to do is I'm going to go to the Transform tool. It's right up here in the tool well. And then on the top right, there's this button here, and it's two arrows that are pointing up and down. I'm going to click that, and that's just going to flip it vertically, and that's really all I'm going to do. And now that I'm done with that transform, I'm going to click Apply to commit that. So now the sky layer is on top of the city. I need to fix that, and I'm just going to drag the city on top of it over here in the Layers panel. And now you can see that we have the sky in its place. Now, to help kind of blend the sky with the rest of the image, I'm going to select that sky layer, and then I'm going to click on the Fill button. Now, with the Color Fill Layer box, I'm going to drop down the presets, and I'm going to go down to Lighten. And I'm just going to take the opacity down to 0, and I'm just going to bring it up just a bit, right around here, about 20%, and click OK. And now that I'm done with that, I'll click on Merge, which will take the color fill layer and merge it with that sky layer. And so here, now we have a nice blended image. And for me, it's much more pleasing to have some of those clouds. All right, now I want to work on this image using perfect black and white. But before I do that, right now I've got two different layers. I've got the sky layer and I've got the city. And if I go into perfect black and white, as is here, it's only going to apply a black and white effect onto the city because that's the active layer. So what I'm going to do is go to the layer menu and select New Stamped Layer. And all that does is it takes the visible layer, so it has the city layer and the sky layer, and it copies it onto a third layer. So now we have one layer that has all of that information. If I want, I can now go to these two layers and select them both and then delete them just to save on file space. And now that I'm done, I'm going to click on black and white from the module selector so that we can start stylizing. Alright, so the way that I usually work in perfect black and white is I start on the left. I live on the left. So we've got these categories of presets. I'm going to go to the hint of color one. And then if you scroll to the bottom here, there's one I really like called Vivid Dream. Now the reason why I like Vivid Dream is not so much, as you can see here, because it shows color, but I actually like the way it kind of presents the glow. So I'm going to go down to the blending at the bottom here, and I'm going to change that blending mode from lighten back to normal. So now we're back here at this kind of normal black and white treatment. I'm going to bring that opacity up to 100%. And now I'm going to go back to the top to start stylizing using the tone. So first, the image is kind of dark overall. I'm going to go ahead and brighten it up a bit, maybe a bit more. And I'm going to add a little bit of contrast overall to the image. I'm also going to drop the white point. It's a bit, there's the white point, the highlights are a bit too strong, and I'm going to drop the black point because the shadows are a bit too punchy for me. I'm also going to bring out some of that shadow detail. So that's going to help especially in the tree line over here. And then I'm going to bring up detail throughout the entire scene. Now the last thing I'm going to do in perfect black and white is I'm going to go to the toner pane here. I'm going to turn it on. And what I want to do is add a kind of a cool tone to the highlights. And the way that I'm going to do that is first I'm going to bring the shadow amount down to 0. So really any of the shadow, so this is what we consider split toning. And split toning, which is controlled over here in the toner pane, allows you to select a color that will kind of tint the highlights, which is this first box, and then a color that will tint the shadows, which is the second. And then the overall strength of that is controlled by the amount. So by bringing the amount of the silver or the shadows down to 0, you can see that we only have the color of the highlights. So the color here, this is more of an amber type. We're going for in an amber type. I'm going to click on the color swatch, and I'm actually going to select a cooler blue. Something like maybe here. All right. So with that done, I'm going to bring the amount all the way to 0, and I'm just going to add a tiny amount. You see it's only 8%, but it adds a really nice cool tone. I'm also going to now bring out the shadows of the color selected just a bit. And so that you can watch, I'll turn the toner on and off. So this is without it, this is with it. Just a very subtle, cool tone that was brought to the image. Now, I saw a lot of questions about how do you actually save a preset. So with this episode today, you can actually go ahead and download the preset that will give you this same look. To save a preset though, all you need to do is go to the preset menu item and select Save Preset. Here you'll just kind of type your name. So here you can call it Cool Blue. You can choose whatever category you want, and you can type your name in, if you can type it correctly, and then click Create. Now, if you go to the My Presets tab right up here, there is the folder Brian's Presets, and then there is Cool Blue, so you can use it on another image. And that's exactly how you save a preset and how you use it. Alright, now that we're done, I'm just going to jump from black and white straight to focal point by clicking on Focus from the module selector. By doing this, Perfect Photo Suite will automatically save the changes here and then open up in focal point. So you don't have to go from here to perfect layers and then back to focal point. It's all nice and easy. Alright, so here we are in focal point, and really all I want to do is bring focus more towards the foreground. And to do that, I'm going to change the shape of my bug. By default it's round, so I'm going to click this and select planar. Now with the focus bug being planar, it's vertical, so grabbing the legs, I'm just going to turn it, make it horizontal, and then bring it down to the foreground. Now, don't worry about what it looks like right now because we're still going to refine it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press and hold on the Option key on a Mac or the Alt key on a PC while putting the cursor inside the body of the bug. So here's my cursor. I'm going to press and hold the Option key or the Alt key and then drag forward, and that's going to tilt the bug. And so you can see that it changes the overall characteristic of the blur. Now with that, I'm going to take the amount of blur and I'm going to bring that down to about maybe 14, maybe even less, like 12%. I don't want it to be that strong of a blur. I want it to be slightly blurred. Maybe actually a tiny bit stronger. So let's go to 13. Yeah, that's good. So I'm happy with this. You can see how it kind of has a tilt shift look. I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to drop the brightness of, under the options pane, I'm going to drop the brightness of the blur area and boost the contrast. And that's going to make this area here a little darker. It brings the eye more towards the foreground, towards the bottom of the screen. And that's really all I'm going to do in focal point. So now that I'm done, I'm going to click Apply and return back to Perfect Layers. Alright, so we're in Perfect Layers, and I just want to walk you through what we did. First, we sent the image in to Perfect Photo Suite, and we used Perfect Mask to knock out the boring sky. And then we used one of our stock sky images in Perfect Layers to add a more interesting sky. Next, Perfect Black and White gave us the treatment that we wanted for black and white, and then Focal Point really helped bring foreground attention. So now that we're done, I'm going to click Save to return back to Lightroom so that we can finish things off. Alright, so just to recap, this was the original image that we started with, that I took back in 2007. And then with Perfect Photo Suite, we were able to get the image into a much more interesting place. You can see that with that new sky, there's just a little bit more body in the background. But we use Focal Point to help kind of bring attention down to the boats. And then we also use Perfect Black and White to give it more of a timeless look. I'm going to go to the Develop module, though, because there is still work to do. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the exposure just a bit, make it a bit brighter, and I'm going to bring out the shadows just a bit there, so that we don't have too much clipping over here. Next, some contrast, some overall global clarity, and then I'm actually going to go to the temperature slider because now that I'm looking at the image, I actually want it to be just a bit warmer. So with the temperature slider, I'm just going to bring it over to the right, just maybe 2, let's try 4%. No, 3%, let's split the difference. Alright, So that's looking really nice right here. And then the last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the graduated filter slider. I'm going to select exposure. So I'm going to drop the exposure down a bit. I'm going to bring up contrast and clarity. And I'm going to draw straight down. And that's going to help bring the eye more towards the bottom of the screen because we're darkening the top. And so that's everything there is to it. Again, I do think it's important for everyone to go through, even if you're a new photographer, you still have images, go through and really, beyond just looking at them at a cursory glance, really pay attention to, do you have any trends? Is there anything that you're doing more of or that you would like to do more of or you should be doing less of? And I promise you that's going to help you in the long run to be a better photographer. So with that, thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you guys next week for episode number 49.